Hey guys, it's Princess here, and I am here with my first Project Artemis video to talk to you guys about the upcoming rotation and what you can do to prepare. It only happens once a year, and it can be intimidating if it's your first time going through it. I know there's a lot of new players coming from things like just the booming collecting hobby right now, as well as just Pokemon Pocket that are coming into TCG, and they might be newer and not familiar with rotation. For those that don't know, rotation is what we call when the format changes in a way that a new set comes into standard and an old set rotates out. What's that are coming in, and going out is depicted by the regulation letter on the bottom of the card. It's like the bottom left. For example, in this upcoming rotation, we'll be losing all cards labeled F, and we're going to be starting the new round of sets labeled I. With this, we generally lose a lot of staples and cards that have been keeping decks together and functioning as they do. Basically, the glue of the format. Heavy Ball, Luminion V, Force Sealstone, Rotom V, Radiant Greninja, Pokestop, all these cards that have like inherent draw engines or card selection. And sometimes we lose entire decks or archetypes like Lugia, Blacklax, Palkia V-Star, the Lost Box Engine, or Regidrago. If you're someone like me and you're losing your favorite deck to rotation, rip Lost Box, fear not. I'm here to make the transition a little bit smoother. Now, as sad as I am losing Lost Box to rotation, I am very excited to play in the regional championships in Atlanta this coming April. I love day one formats. The field is going to be wide open. There's no data from other regionals. So it really rewards your own play skill and preparation leading up to that event. So, let's see what we can do to prepare. So one of the first things you should do to prepare for rotation is going to be research. You need to research the potential prospects for decks in the format. Not only do you want to look into the decks people are already playing, but you also want to look into ideas and archetypes that people could potentially play. For example, everyone's kind of known that Raging Bolt is going to be an existing archetype in the format, since it really doesn't lose anything from its core strategy. Of course, it loses, Pokestop, which is an insane consistency card, but it still keeps, the Raging Bolts, the Ogre Slaughter's Vitality, the main things that really make the deck. Same thing goes for Dragapult. It loses a lot of its consistency cards in the way of Luminion, Lance, Force Sealstone, but the strategy feels mostly the same. You want to announce Phantom Pipe every turn. So those are decks we kind of already know people are going to be playing. But what about the new strategies that are coming out of Journey Together, like the End Zorak package or the Hopzation double? Even if at a glance, the archetype doesn't seem super powerful, you'd kind of be doing yourself a disservice to dismiss it entirely and not even, think what can I use from this pre-built deck basically. Maybe if the Hopzation and Cram don't necessarily fit, the double has, Boss's Orders on a stick, and that has historically shown a lot of results. One of the ways that you can go and look at what others have been playing in post-rotation is just by going on Limitless and look at the posted City Leagues results. Limitless has this fantastic new thing. I don't think they were doing it a couple years ago, but they are now posting all the Japanese results, so we can actually just go and see in one nice clean spot what everyone else is playing in Japan or in these other regions. And you should never take these results entirely to heart. Don't think just because Walls won the first event, so it is going to be an oppressive force. It's the absolute best deck. You need to be able to look at the rest of the results, the rest of the top 8 or top 16, and be like, okay, well, all these other decks didn't have an answer to it, so that's probably why this deck succeeded to the extent that it did. But in that same vein, you shouldn't dismiss them entirely either. If you think, I'm going to use the example again of Walls, Walls is stinky, there's no way this deck actually would ever win. It's look at it and see, maybe there's some ideas you can pull from it. There's an idea or something they did to increase consistency for their list that you can take and maybe apply to whatever deck you're testing. Don't take their results, like I said, to heart. Don't take it too strong necessarily, but you should get whatever information you can out of it. There's also, of course, a lot of information out there from our fellow TCG players. There's content creators like Azul GG and Tricky Jim. They'll pretty often sit on stream and put together decks for the new format, just spitball ideas with chat. in preparation for these like very big and open events, you really shouldn't shut down any idea, and you should at least consider everything once. You never know when you'll strike gold. I'm sure there's all kinds of ridiculous ideas that someone would have been like, oh, what if we just put, a 2-2 double in our Raging Bolt list? And I mean, I wouldn't be remotely surprised if, something goofy and non-traditional like that did just happen to do well at an event. So now that we've farmed all the possible information we can, it's time for us to lock in what decks we're interested in trying out in the new format. You should try and pick a couple of decks you're interested in trying and see how they feel. I do say a couple because if you were to only pick one deck, and you kind of run the risk of tunneling really hard on that deck, and it can make it hard to realize if it doesn't happen to be the right play for the event. If the only thing is Raging Bolt EX, it's going to be really hard to understand that other decks do have, benefits of viability to them as well. You want to pick a deck with a solid game plan and a solid engine. My teammate Emma Hagen actually put together an article on all the available engines in the new format and how you should put them to good use. If you want to check that out, it was absolutely fantastic, and even brought up some things that I didn't realize we still had access to in the format. I generally say pick a few decks that you think have potential in the format to test, and then, early on I'll probably kind of pick one of those as a fallback or a pocket pick. If of all the decks I'm testing, if they don't end up feeling right, you can always go back to Old Faithful. For example, right now my comfort pick and my backup plan for Atlanta is Raging Bolt, because as we said, the deck doesn't change much in the format and has a very clean game plan. It's very consistent. So if nothing else that I'm trying doesn't feel good enough, then I'm gonna play the thing that I know works. Now with deck selection and choosing the text for your list, I do generally recommend choosing the most consistent game plan you can. Since the field is so open, we don't have 3 to 5 decks that we're worried about beating, and you can easily tech out your list to beat all of them. Realistically, you could play against 9 very different decks in your day one at Atlanta. Because of this, cooking up crazy lists or crazy techs is often kind of sketchy because you don't really know what you're trying to beat yet. We don't have any data. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can just announce Phantom Dive every turn, and it's probably good enough in most situations because, no one else really knows what's going on either. For the average player, I do kind of recommend locking in whatever deck or strategy you want to play at least the Sunday before the event. The last thing you want to be doing is floundering on what deck to play the day before the regional. Spending your whole week panicked. I don't know what I'm going to play. I don't know what I'm going to do. You kind of just want to get it locked down so you can commit the rest of that final week to finalize testing, maybe changing, the last 2 cards of your deck to make sure they feel perfect, and traveling and overall just enjoying the trip. My favorite thing to do the Friday before the event is just to hang out and enjoy seeing my friends from other states because I already locked in my deck a week ago. I have too many stories of people making panic deck changes last minute and regretting it entirely. Now, for the final step of preparation for a regional, and arguably the most important, testing. Good testing can make or break a regional, no matter what deck you're playing. Repetition with your deck is good, so you can, make decisions cleaner and faster, as well as just the more games you have with your deck, the more chances you have to experience different board states and learn how to play around different strategies. I remember a game in day 2 at San Antonio where I said to myself, is there any reason not to bench this Mew EX right now in this game and, draw an extra card? And, I deliberated and I decided to bench the Mew, take my attack in my turn, whatever. My opponent benches Raikou V very easily, lightning generators onto it, and they have exactly enough damage to knock out my active because I benched that extra Pokemon, so they got that extra 20 from, the Raikou's Lightning Rondo. In that moment, I was just sitting there thinking, man, there's no way I ever would have made that mistake if I had gotten more testing in this matchup. When testing, it's important to test your bad matchups as well as your good matchups. I see too often people will say, oh, Guardy is free, I don't need to test that matchup at all. And then, they get paired into it and their opponent outplays them because they have more experience in the matchup, Every matchup is losable if you don't respect it and test properly. So it is important to, respect everything. I think before every event, especially going into an event like the first regional rotation, it is important to have some number of games into every matchup. Even if you think there's a sub 1% chance that you're going to play against something goofy like the Slowpoke deck, you should at least play a few games into the matchup so you understand your game plan and the play patterns. You're never going to regret getting, a couple extra games of testing. There is also a little bit of benefit to, even if I've locked in that I'm playing, again, as the example, Raging Bolt, it doesn't hurt for me to get my own games in with Terra Box, so I can see firsthand from my side how the deck wants to win and, what its game plan is. Yeah, any extra games is always good. All right, now that we've done all our research, we've locked in a deck, and we tested till the cows come home, we are pretty much ready for the new format. I mean, at the very least, we're as ready as everybody else going to Atlanta, if not more. And really, what more can you ask for? We've put ourselves in the best position we can for the event. We're going to give it our best. Get out there, start preparing for Journey together. Go get some games in, start testing. I don't know about you guys, but I'm going out to test some Raging Bolt. Peace.